Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a fantastic opportunity, the Summer of STEM virtual workshops with Thales. So we're delighted to have you joining us today. My name is Maria, and I'll be helping and guiding you through this exciting session and supporting anything technical behind the scenes. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping points. Please note that this session is recorded, so the content can be reviewed and shared where appropriate later. If you have any questions throughout the workshop, please use the chat function in the Microsoft Teams. We'll do our best to answer them throughout the session or maybe at a designated Q&A point. Today's workshop is the second in a series of 4 STEM challenges and workshops designed to help you explore real-world challenges, understand more career pathways, and how to apply science, technology, engineering, and maths skills to your future. We're excited to kick off this journey with you all and see the creativity and innovation and enthusiasm that you guys can bring in the challenges ahead. So thank you for joining us, and let's get started. I'll hand over to the team at Thales.
Good morning. Welcome to this second session of Thales's Summer of STEM. My name is James Mackay, and I have the privilege of being the head of STEM here at Thales. Some of you may be joining us for the first time, so I just wanted to share a little bit of insight and information about who Thales are and what we do. So Thales is probably the largest technology company that you've never heard of, but if you have a bank card, if someone in your family has a SIM card, the chances are that we've interacted with you in ways that you just haven't realized. If you have had the benefit of being on a plane, or if you've seen one in the sky, 2 out of 3 planes take off and land using our equipment. And we've had some really, really good accolades this year, being named as one of Glassdoor's top places to work within the UK, and been nominated in the top 100 apprenticeship employers within the UK as well. We work across a variety of different sectors, everything from submarines, which we're going to hear a little bit more about today, all the way up to satellites in space. So without stealing his thunder, I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Julian, who is going to share a bit more information about what day-to-day looks like in his life. Julian, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Julian Chown. I am the Technical Director for Thales Underwater Systems in the UK, and I have extended responsibility for all of the submarine activity that we do in the US and Australia as part of the AUKUS program, which is perhaps something you might want to go and look up afterwards. And if there's time, I can give you more of a brief at the end of this session. I'm going to talk you through my journey in Thales. In fact, my journey as an engineer, where it started, where it is now, and perhaps where I plan on going as I continue my career inside the engineering discipline. I have a few slides with a few photographs, and this will give you a bit of a flavour, as I say, for my life and what being an engineer looks like, particularly inside Thales. So I'll start with this. Almost certainly nobody recognises this. Perhaps your parents might. I suspect you do not. But this is where it all began for me. It began 28 years ago when my mum rang me up at university, having spotted an article on what was CFAX, which predates the internet. This is where information was presented, news articles and so on, and you had to wait for these pages to flick through on your television set. But this is where the news was typically broadcast. And this is a news article around a contract that Thomson Marconi sonar had secured, and that was going to create lots of jobs in a small village where I lived, where I grew up, a little place called Temple Combe. So Mum rang me up and she said, Julian, you need to apply for a job. And I said, Mum, I haven't got time to apply for a job. I've got my finals. I'm really busy. And she said, just do this one, and I promise you I won't keep pestering you. So I contacted Thomson Marconi, as it was back then, became Thales. I sent in a letter, and then I had an interview, got invited for an interview in the late, or in fact, the early 1999. I'm sorry, you can see at the top of this article was November 1998. Early interview in around February time. Then I got offered a job to come and work for Thomson Marconi, which was really welcome actually, because it allowed me to not worry then about my finances and not having a job at the end of my degree and going straight into some interesting work. So that's where it all started. And what I'll talk you through now is my journey inside Thales and where I've ended up where I am today. So I started as a graduate engineer in 1999 with a master's degree in electronics from the University of Exeter. And you can see there, top left, is my very first Thomson Marconi sonar badge. Nice little young face, no grey hair of note. You can see now I have lots of grey hair. Fast forward a couple of years, I became the electrical design authority for an Australian communications system for a submarine, which I'll talk to in just a moment. A couple of more years forward again, I became a systems engineer on an autonomous underwater vehicle for NATO. And again, I'll talk to that in just a moment. A few more years again, became project design authority. So this is holding accountability for the technical solutions that we deliver out of our business. That was in around 2008 on UK submarine programs. And at the same time, I was awarded a fellowship of the IET in around 2008. 2009, I became a Thales expert, which is a recognition of critical skills in our business that allow us to deliver the tools and the solutions and the products that we deliver to our customers. 2014, I then became a design authority for export contracts. So these are now working with export customers such as in Australia and in Sweden. 2018, I became a senior expert. So this is another level again in Thales. This is effectively equivalent to a director of the business. So this is the way Thales recognizes that individuals with a particular skill can have the same level of responsibility, the same financial package, and so on, that was offered to our senior program managers and our senior directors. 2023, I became technical director. That is my current role. And today is 2026.
And Julian, just for those watching, can you just tell us what the IET is for those who might not be familiar?
Good question. Yeah, so the IET is the Institute of Engineering and Technology, and it's a governing body in the UK that allows engineers in our domain to have a common set of competencies, a framework for professional development to allow people in the industry to be at their very best.
So if you were thinking of becoming an engineer, that it's probably an organisation you've become quite familiar with.
100%. Yeah, you become an associate member, a member, and then perhaps one day a fellow.
Thank you.
Yes, that's right. Okay, I put up some external recognition here. So these are quotes from our customer community that have been written about me through my journey inside Thales. And I put this up just because I wanted to really highlight that never in my wildest dreams did I ever think anybody would write anything about me like this. And I suppose the point is, anybody can achieve it. If you put your mind to something, anything is achievable. So I've gone from being a graduate, I did my GCSEs, maths and English, sciences and so on, design technology. I really found a passion for technology. I found a passion for taking things apart, invariably never going back together again, but I took them apart anyway. I wanted to be an accountant actually when I first started, and then quickly realized that that wasn't for me, and I'd much rather go into a technology-based career. That then led me into my A-levels, where I did maths, further maths, design technology, and then ultimately into my degree. And never did I think that Navy admirals would be saying that I have profound impact on Australian, UK and US relationships for a decade. Considered to be a UK leading authority in my domain, which is in submarine sonar, highly significant capability improvements, world-class activity, and then extremely knowledgeable. It was from one of our Swedish customers. And so the point of this really is that anything is possible. If I can achieve it, I can assure you those on the call can also achieve it. So 1999 to 2000, where it all began. So I mentioned I was a graduate from the University of Exeter. That's me. And the bottom left, in fact, I'm second from the right in that image. I'm covering up the word Exeter. And that's me with my university housemates, who I still keep in contact to this day. We meet up once a year at Christmas time, typically. And instantly I was put on a flight once I joined Thales out to Australia to work on the Collins class submarine. So I'd gone from eating, moldy bread and cheese as a student, or beans on toast, right the way through to flying business class, staying into nice hotels, really experiencing a completely different way of life. And so that was a complete eye opener for me. But it gave me exposure to other cultures. I was able to work with Australians, and that was really good from a professional development perspective. And in the bottom right, you'll get a flavour here for me having some fun throughout my career. So bottom right then is me playing some golf in Adelaide. But my job was graduate engineer working on a communications mast system. I spent 6 months in Australia in total. I was responsible for all of what's called the inboard equipment. So that's the equipment inside the submarine. It's designed to not get wet. The outboard equipment is the stuff on the outside that typically gets wet. And I spent quite a lot of time doing the sea trials. So this is on the submarine, 5 days at sea, 18-hour, really long days. But goodness me, what an experience! Absolutely, what experience.
And what is it like on a submarine, Julian?
It's very cramped, as you might expect. We were hot bunking. So what that means is that there are very few places to sleep. There are more people on board than there are beds. So you end up having to wait for somebody to finish their sleep. So they go on to shift, and then you go and jump in their bed. That's called hot bunking. So that was an interesting experience. Typically fried food, very, very tasty food, but typically made in a confined space. So you end up getting off the submarine smelling of all manner of food types that have been made. And as a contractor, you don't really want to use up the these scarce resources such as water. So for the 5 days that I was at sea, for example, I didn't have a shower. So lots of, as you can imagine, just to try and keep the smell down. But you get off with a big beard and lots of, so anyway, a great experience is my point.
Living centre of Lynx, Africa.
Yeah, exactly. It was actually Lynx, Africa. Yeah. Here's an image here. So I'm going to put a call out to the people on the call now to spot something. So this is me playing golf in Adelaide South Course. That's a great drive. If you're a golfer, please don't comment. I know I go over the top. I got a wicked slice on me. Can anybody see my ball? And bear in mind, I had images of the ball going straight down the fairway here, straight towards the hole. I'll just pause for a second to see if there's anybody willing to make a recommendation on where the ball might be. Can anybody see the ball?
Someone says we can see it. So I can see in the clouds. I can see the ball. Tell us where you can see it.
Okay. There is my ball.
Yeah.
I can assure you that was the most shocking shot. I nearly took somebody out on the green that was just off to the left of the photo here. So not quite what I'd anticipated. This was taken on an old Generation 1 digital camera where you didn't quite know what you'd taken till you got back, had to download it and see what was on. So that was my boss at the time, managed to capture that photograph of that ball. Okay, move on then. 2003, I worked on the 2193 sonar for the Royal Navy, Hunt class mine hunters. I was responsible for all aspects of acceptance. Now, this is where we have to then sell the solution to the customer at the end of the contract to prove it does what it's supposed to do. Does it work? Is it safe? And to put that in scale, that contract was worth around 50,000 new phones. So the cost of a phone, multiply that by 50,000, that was broadly the cost of that particular contract, for which I was responsible for making sure that it did what it had to do and that it met the customer's requirement. Unfortunately, I had to swap Sydney, top image, for Portsmouth, a bit wet and windy, but nevertheless, a good experience, something else to add to the list of experiences. 2003, 2007 then, so I then worked on an unmanned underwater vehicle for NATO. NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That's a governing body that looks after the safety and security of North America and selected European countries. It's a very, very powerful body. We are part of that, and we were working here on a future drone, if you will. In today's language, we call that a drone. Back then we didn't. That was an unmanned underwater vehicle. And that was an international collaboration between ourselves, our colleagues in Italy, and also a company in the US, in Boston, that was a spin out from MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I swapped Portsmouth then for Boston. So that's an image of me, bottom left, on the back of a ship in Boston Harbor, doing some good things. But again, it wasn't all work and no play. So you can see top image, that's me attending a Red Sox game at Fenway Park. And also bottom right is me in a little dinghy, I would say in Italy somewhere. I don't know where, I don't remember. But that would be doing some sea trials. And you can see the little unmanned underwater vehicle behind me. I have my safety vest on. 2007, 2009, so I became recognized as an expert in my field in submarines and sonar. 2007, chartered engineer, really underpinned by the extensive training program that's provided by Thales. I was on the graduate training program, which persists to this day, so 27 years on now, and we still have a very strong, robust Thales training graduate program. I became a fellow of the IET, which is the highest membership level that there is inside the Institute of Engineering and Technology in 2008. So I was 31 or 32 years old then. And then I became the Thales expert in submarines and sonar in 2009. But what is sonar? Perhaps there's a few on the call who don't understand what a sonar is. So I've got some little bit here, a bit of a lesson, if you like, in sonar. So sonar refers to, it stands for sound navigation and ranging. And in the context of a submarine, submarines use sonar to detect objects. There are two ways of doing that. There's called active sonar, which is where we use effectively underwater microphones to transmit sound energy, and it bounces off things and then it comes back. We detect the echo, and we can determine from that typically where it is, for example, the particular object that we're trying to find. Or there's passive sonar, which is where the submarine typically sits and listens for noises, and then it can determine where that noise is coming from. For those who don't know, Leonardo da Vinci apparently he was quite good with a paintbrush. He was one of the first people to have discovered that underwater sound travels very well. And then inspired the development of sonar many years later.
And Julian, am I right by saying that if people who are watching have seen sonar commonly depicted in films, it might be that kind of beeping sound?
Yeah, it's the ping. Yeah, the ping, exactly that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the ping is the transmission, and then we typically wait for the reflection, which you hear as well. Okay, so 2009, I said I became an expert. Now, I'm a car fan, by the way. I love my cars. And so I've just got a little sort of, a group of photographs of the various cars that I've been very fortunate to have within Thales as my company cars. And so this is my very first one, 2009. I was immensely proud. My very first brand new car. I love BMWs. This is my BMW Tourer. I love that car. I had that for a few years. That's my first one. Second one, I then got an Audi A4. Not quite so keen on that, if I'm honest, but I thought I'd try Audi. I like German cars. So BMW to start, then went to an Audi for a few years, and then I went back to having a BMW. So this is another 3 Series Tourer. I did like that car. That was exceptional, that one. I really quite quick, nice and powerful. Used to go really well. And then I had an M4, which I absolutely loved. Again, all courtesy of having a company car or a company car allowance through working for Thales in a senior role. I had to get rid of that car in the end because it was incredibly thirsty on fuel, not particularly good for the environment. And so my latest one here is a full electric i5, which is an exceptionally good car as well.
So we have a question about what your dream car would be.
Oh, Ferrari, without question. I mean, I don't even hesitate. Just last night, I drove up to Crawley, which is where I am today, in my Ferrari top. I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan. So yes, a red Ferrari every day of the week. Yeah, for sure.
And if you're on the call, feel free to put in what your favorite car is as well from the ones that Julian
yes, please. We can have a chat afterwards if there's time. So yes, I love my car. I also have, and again, you probably won't know what this is. I have an old Escort XR3i in my garage. I suspect your parents might know what that is. You probably don't. But again, it's just an indication of me loving my cars. So 2023, Underwater Systems Technical Director, what does that mean? So I'm technically in charge of submarines, safe navigation. So these are systems that allow us to clear navigation paths of objects that allow us to get shipping through, for example. So we do a lot of work in safe navigation. I'm responsible for all of our research and development. And so this is Thales investing some of its profits effectively in moving technology forward to allow us to offer better solutions into our customer. Again, this is about keeping, us and our families safe in our environment. And so we invest a lot of money in new novel technology in the underwater systems space. And in recent years, looking at autonomous systems and AI. And so we're doing a lot of work there to make sure that we can capitalize on the good work done in the commercial space in AI, but also its applicability to the work that we do in underwater systems. But never missing out on the fun. So here we go. Bottom left, I was very fortunate to be able to get to the F1 at Albert Park in Melbourne. So I managed to watch the Formula One. Again, I'd never in my wildest dreams that I think I'd get to watch the Australian Grand Prix, but I did, courtesy of being in the country at the time, due to some work with Thales. I spent some time at Niagara Falls up in New York State, again doing some work out there, again with Thales. But while you're out there, got to have some fun, got to go and see what's going on. So don't sit behind a screen all the time. Go out, make the most of the opportunity, and go and witness some of the world. Sydney Cricket Ground. This is me watching the Sydney Sixers, the Sydney Oval, a couple of years ago. That was an exceptionally good. What an experience that was. That was KFC buckets on the head during the big bash. I think it's called the Big Bash game or something. And then you can't go to Sydney without climbing up the bridge. And so that's me a couple of years ago now on the Sydney Harbour Bridge and overlooking the Opera House. So again, courtesy of Thales, thank you.
And I think you just answered our questions because people were questioning whether it was cricket or football. But I think your passion for cricket has just come alive there.
Cricket,
so.
Definitely. I used to play cricket when I was a child, actually. Ran out of time in the end, but yeah, I definitely love cricket. And it was absolutely fantastic going to Sydney Cricket Ground and watching the Sydney Sixers. And so to now, 2026. There's just a few examples here, product innovation. So we look at making sure that we can minimize waste. So we do a lot of work minimizing CO2 emissions. We use additive manufacture, which you might know as 3D printing, to look at evolving our products. We look at reuse of waste from our factories to see if we can repurpose that in some manner. Again, minimize our footprint on the environment. We invest in schools. So I've done some work with a college recently looking at underwater vehicle technology, inviting the students to propose technology solutions that we potentially would then take into our own product lines. I help shape the policies for Thales principally to make sure that we are doing things correctly. We are treating the environment in the way that needs to be treated, and also that we're fundamentally securing financial value for our shareholders. And in the bottom left there, you can see me on the very left of that image as a judge at the recent Big Bang competition that, remind me, James, is the biggest STEM event.
Yes, so it was hosted at the Big Bang Fair, which is the biggest STEM event in the UK, with 20,000 young people coming through its doors over the course of 3 days.
Brilliant. Yeah. What an experience. Absolutely. And I'm really privileged to have been able to see the wonderful ideas that the students were coming up with. I mean, it's incredible. I was absolutely blown away by some of the work that was happening. So really, really good. And then today, so what have I done recently with the team? I'm very fortunate to work with about 600 highly competent, very, very good scientists, engineers, and mathematicians in Thales Underwater Systems. And that's just underwater systems. We have Thales UK, we have Thales Group. So it's a huge pool of expertise that we can call upon. But for this particular project, which is a piece of work we launched last year to develop a new underwater system for what's called unmanned underwater vehicles, large ones. These are quite large compared to some of the traditional ones we've worked on, and develop a technology that allows us to really attack a market that hasn't been attacked so far. So we launched this last year. We went from a whiteboard sketch in January to an in-water demonstration in November of a full sonar suite. And now we're pursuing that through additional sea trials and then go to market. But this is a really good activity where we got a group of people. I didn't quite lock them in a room physically, but we effectively locked them in a room, and we said, you have the freedom now to do whatever you need to do to go and make this happen. So we gave them a bit of a blank check, not quite a blank check, but we gave them lots of freedom to go ahead and develop their technology, for which we now have a product. And so I suppose if I can close,
yes,
I would close by saying, definitely do a job that you love. If you love your job, they say, there is a saying, sorry, you'll never work a day in your life. And I can absolutely agree to that. And I think the way to a career and to enjoy your career is honestly to enjoy what you do, and have some fun, and do a little bit of work along the way. Probably is how I would phrase it, but definitely have some fun and make the most of the opportunity, because engineering, science, mathematics, it is not sitting behind a screen. It is not writing requirements. There is some of that, of course, but it is not just that. As you've seen, there's opportunity to travel the world and really experience some things that you might otherwise not be able to experience.
Thank you, Julian. So we have some time for Q&A. So if you do have any additional questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We've got some that we're going to cover just now, if that's all right with you, Julian. So Amber, thank you for your question. What made you get into engineering?
That's a great question. I thought I wanted to be an accountant.
Yep.
But I decided, having done my GCSE design and technology, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed mathematics, joined the two together, and because I was very inquisitive and started to take things apart, I thought that I would probably want some sort of career in something technical. And so, having finished my GCSEs, I decided to then do some A levels that are aligned to design technology, or some sort of technical, some STEM subjects. And then from there, it kind of meandered my way. I never thought I'd work for Thales. I didn't think I'd work for Thales. I didn't think I'd work in underwater systems. I didn't think I'd be a sonar expert. But this is just, it's how your career goes. You just have to follow what you love, and you end up doing something which gets you immense enjoyment over what is now 27 years as of 2 days ago.
And congratulations for that anniversary.
Thank you.
And thinking about the A levels that you just mentioned, you said about linking those back to STEM subjects. Did you, because it's a question that we often get asked, did you focus predominantly on STEM, or did you have a breadth of subjects, and did you balance them in different areas, the humanities, arts, etc.?
So the honest truth is, I chose subjects which I enjoyed and that I was good at. So maths, further maths, design technology, and computer studies actually were my 4 subjects, all technical. I was reasonably good at them, and that allowed me to do well effectively, and then that opened up opportunity to then go to university, and then opened up an opportunity to get my job within Thales. So I didn't necessarily think I'll try and get a breadth here. I kind of focused in. I said, I know what I want to do. I love dealing with technical things. I didn't quite know what that meant, but I thought these are the subjects that are going to open up some opportunity for me.
And I know that it'll be a topic on people's minds as a hiring manager, because you've got quite a team that you work with and that works for you. Are there particular things that you look for in terms of A level or GCSE requirements when people are applying to enter the company?
So Thales are, I'll say yes and no, actually. So Thales employ across the breadth. So we employ people from school, from A levels, from university. When we get people in, we can often put people on apprenticeship schemes. And quite honestly, it's about the individual. It is about the individual. It's about showing a desire and a passion. I think if you can show a passion for the job, if you can go into, let's say, for example, you'd like to have an interview with Thales, and there's an opportunity to have an interview, my recommendation would be understand what we do and then ask questions about what we do. Show an interest in what we do, and that will start a conversation. And an interview suddenly becomes a chat. It doesn't become a answer this question, what did you, it becomes a bit of a dialogue around the work we do and where we're going as a business and how you can interact and how you can contribute to our mission. So, science and maths are very, very important. The STEM subjects are important. But I suppose what I would say is that don't worry if you don't do well. It's about the effort. It honestly is. It's about the ability to really want to do the job. You don't need straight A's. It's not about that. It's about having the right attitude, and that will definitely come across in any interview.
Thank you. And we have a question about any extracurriculars that you did so that you were accepted into Thales. So when you were applying, is there anything that you did to supplement and augment your application to make it stand out?
Goodness me, I would say golf, but you've seen the output of the golf swinging. So I did some work experience. I worked for a company down the road from where so during my A levels on my university, I did some work experience in different technical companies. And that was quite useful, because when it got to the interview, I could call upon some of that evidence, and I could say, well, I've done this piece of work over here, and this is what I learned. So I would say extracurricular activities insofar as getting some experience. Now, whether you do that through volunteering, through some holiday job opportunity you can find, I don't think it really matters, but something that is linked to the occupation that you want to try and do. And if it's an engineering-based subject, definitely try and get some experience in engineering. And then certainly in the projects we're about to launch are all part of that. It's all about having something that you can hook into and start to learn.
Brilliant. And I think that it's a really good point to link back to that STAR model if you haven't heard of it. And if you are at the age where you are going through the application process and prepping for interview, definitely something to look up, because it helps you shape and formulate your answers in a way that gives you the best exposure in terms of linking back to experience. So we've got a question about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy engineering?
I absolutely love it. It is, I come to work, I love, clearly there are some very good days, there's some not so good days, it's not perfect all the time, but I come to work because I love what I do. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't be here 27 years later doing what I do. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's 20.
Yes.
Genuinely, but I'm really fortunate to be able to work with a tremendous bunch of people. The team is just fantastic. You mentioned earlier on the Glassdoor results. Thales is a people company. Years ago we used to have something called People First. It's slightly changed in terms of the branding, but it is a family-based environment. It is about the people. We generally have a kind of a way of life in Thales, which is, if you look after the people will look after the business, and that is absolutely true. And the opportunities have been tremendous. Thales will throw us in the deep end with support, and I think that's really important. It's not about saying, here's a really difficult job, go and do it, and then see how you get on. Here's a difficult job, here's a mentor. I haven't spoken about mentors. I've had a mentor for years, right up until 2 years ago. So now I'm knocking on a bit, but for 25 years I've had a mentor inside Thales, which that individual has helped me develop my career. They've helped me network, because typically mentors are more senior, they have much more connections, they have a wider network, and they can start to open up doors and opportunity. So having a mentor has been really helpful, because it's allowed me to really understand what Thales can offer and how I can contribute, and importantly have an impact for Thales. Nobody wants to do a job which doesn't have an impact. We all want to have an impact. I don't even think I'll answer the question now, but on a scale of 1 to 10, definitely 20. And it's about really taking risk with yourself. And if you don't believe you can do it, give it a go, because I'm quite confident you can do it.
Brilliant, thank you. So we're going to move on to the next section of the call, and if there are any questions in the chat that we haven't managed to get around to, we'll respond to you with our Q&A, which will come attached to the recording of this video. So we're going to launch this week's weekly challenge, and every week we are launching a challenge based around the topic that we have talked about. So this week's will be focused on marine life, because that links in quite nicely to your area of expertise. But before we go on, we do have the opportunity just to highlight some excellent submissions that we received from last week's challenge. So congratulations, Kitty, for submitting your community litter project from St. Bartholomew's School, and Evelyn with your excellent work on autonomous robots. We didn't have the school that you were attached to, but both of those recipients will receive an Amazon voucher, which will be emailed to you to congratulate you on that excellent work. If you are interested in following up and connecting some of what we've talked about today with a potential engineering project, then this is the project for you. And you will also have that opportunity to receive a voucher. So thinking that you're an inventor, think about any marine problem. It could be something related to anything in the sea. It could be coral, protecting coral reefs, or designing something to tackle pollution, which we know is a very topical issue in our oceans. You can draw your idea, build a simple model, or make slides to explain how your idea works. What we're really looking for is what problem you're trying to tackle and the impact that may have. Julian, given that you're an expert in this field, what top tips would you give to anyone who is going to tackle this project?
What I would say is not related necessarily to this field, but in general, in any engineering project, on-time delivery is critical. So recognize how much time you have and make sure that when you get to the end of your time, you're able to deliver the outcome. So that's really important, because if you don't deliver, you won't get to win, you won't win the bid, you won't win the project, you will not satisfy your customer if you are late. So the first thing is understand how much time you have, deliver your output on time, and then slice up the time you have to do the various tasks. It's really important you understand what you're trying to achieve. So definitely write down your requirement, as we would call it, but your outcome that you're trying to achieve. Firstly, also make it achievable. Don't try and do something which is unachievable in the time and within the skill set either of yourself or the resources that you can tap into over the project duration. So I would say at a top level, write down what you're trying to achieve, make sure it's achievable, definitely deliver on time, make sure it's within the capacity and capability of either yourself or the team and the people and the resources that you have available.
Perfect, thank you. And there's been a couple of questions come through from here. So when you are ready to submit, we will highlight the selected submissions for winners next week on our next webinar. And you can email it to the thales@school-outreach.com email. A great question about working as part of a group. Absolutely, we'd always encourage collaborative working because that replicates what we do here. So if you have a group of friends or people that want to get involved, please do that and send your submissions in to us. Lots of the questions that we have are about careers, so what next steps might be at Thales and how people can get further involved. So on the screen now, you will have two QR codes. The top QR code will take you to a platform where you can find out a little bit more about careers at Thales, particularly some of those entry requirements that we were talking about earlier, because they may vary depending on the role or the stage that you're applying for. For instance, if you're coming in post for a graduate entry, it may be that you need a degree. So have a look there to find out a bit more specific information. We do have a wide variety of roles. So we take on, I think, around 200 apprentices or more, give or take, every year. So there's a great breadth that you can select from. So find something that stands to you, find your passion, and you'll never work that day in your life. The other thing that we have here is a link to SpringPod, which is our virtual work experience where you can find out more about the company. Julian works on one part of the company related to submarines and sonar, but we have a wide breadth of different products that we work with as well. So if you want to find out a little bit more about space or other areas, then that's a great resource to go to as well. And then finally, thank you for attending. We have our next session next Tuesday at 11 a.m. and we're going to have a member from our software engineering division come to speak about their journey. So I'm really, really excited for that. And the following week, we've got someone coming to talk to us about their expertise in AI. Absolutely a really important topic at the moment. So I definitely recommend tuning into both of those. This will allow you to register to next week's session and we'll share the QR code again in the following week. So I think it just remains to thank you, Julian, for coming. It's been a real pleasure to hear a bit more about your work and all the interesting stuff that you do. And hopefully if you have any other questions, pop them in the chat. We will send them out on those Q&As. But thank you for joining us and have a very good day.
Thank you.